Hi everyone, this video is about quantifiers in Chinese, or in Chinese that is called 量词, and this video will go over a full explanation about what they are, how they work, and give plenty of examples to try to illustrate them and clarify the meaning of them. Okay, let's start out with the very basic question, what is a quantifier? So before we begin, it's probably prudent to mention that it's also called a classifier or a measure word. Different people who teach Chinese will use different terms, but these are all the same thing. Quantifier, classifier, measure word, same thing. It is a word that is required before nouns in certain situations when referring to them. Now, that perhaps doesn't make sense when you first hear it, maybe it's not clear, but in 15 minutes time, once I've gone over the full explanation, it should make a lot of sense. So I'd like to start out by talking about some other Indo-European languages. French, Spanish, and German. They all share a certain similarity. If you've gone and learned one of these languages or started to, you may have heard other people say, hey, it's so hard to learn French because there are 3 words for the and they depend on the gender of the noun that you're referring to. Now, I'm not even going to embarrass myself by trying to pronounce these. Those of you who can speak French will know it's something like lu, la, li, something like that. So French, German, and Spanish, they're all cute with their little male and female forms that are a little bit complicated and hard for us to learn. And English is so pleasantly nice because we just don't have the male and female distinction. But Chinese is like French, German, and Spanish on steroids. And that's what quantifiers are. Chinese has hundreds of quantifiers. So where French or German may have 3, 4, or whatever, 5 ways of saying the, in Chinese there are hundreds of ways of referring to nouns. Each is used in various contexts with other nouns. But, I'm just going to add this in here for those of you who are a bit scared, ge, the character I've put there on the screen, is the most generic quantifier. So when in doubt about which one to use, you can normally safely say ge. And often Chinese people themselves just say ge all the time because sometimes they are lazy to use the right quantifier anyway. So I've given you the basic explanation, but I feel like before we launch into some examples, English itself can be used to explain extremely clearly the concept of quantifiers. Okay, so let's start out by talking about nouns in English. In English, there are 2 types of nouns. There are quantifiable nouns and non-quantifiable nouns. Now, for context, we'll briefly mention quantifiable nouns. Key, phone, person, spoon, pen, watch. For each of these nouns, we could easily add another character, or in the case of person, switch to people, and that turns it into a plural form. So, similar to that, we could easily add a number before it. A key, a phone, a person. 3 keys, 7 phones, 2 people. You don't have to add any other word in between the word 3 and the word keys, but in Chinese, you do. However, this is not completely foreign to us in English, because in English there are some words that are non-quantifiable nouns, and for non-quantifiable nouns, English itself needs quantifiers to speak about these nouns in numbers. So this will illustrate it. Water, love, sunlight, grass. These are examples of some nouns in English that are non-quantifiable. So you can't say a water, a love, a sunlight, a grass. And you also can't say 3 water, 2 love, 5 sunlight, 7 grass. That doesn't really make sense. The moment you hear it, you can tell it doesn't make sense. So why is that the case? Well, it's because these nouns in English are kind of like substances. They are non-quantifiable. They are usually an object that doesn't come in discrete quantities naturally. And so how do we solve this? Well, we solve it with the English equivalent of Chinese quantifiers. So, for example, a drop of water, or a pint of water, or a cup of water. We use a quantifier in there to take what is intrinsically not discrete, that is water, and to bunch it up into some kind of discrete unit. So love, I don't know what the real quantifier is, but you could say a dose of love, right? A ray of sunlight, a blade of grass. And you could also add additional numbers in front there. 3 drops of water, 2 doses of love, 5 rays of sunlight, 7 blades of grass. You notice how we've taken these nouns that are intrinsically non-quantifiable, water, love, sunlight, grass. We've used a quantifier, drop, dose, ray, blade, and by so doing, we've been able to repackage this noun in such a manner that we can quantify the noun. We can say there's 1 of them, we can say there are 7, we can say there are 500 drops of water. The point is we've used a certain word that's enabled us to quantify this noun. Chinese quantifiers work exactly the same way. In Chinese, all nouns are non-quantifiable, no matter how much that doesn't make sense to us. So even the word for person in Chinese is technically non-quantifiable, and you need a quantifier before saying person, a person. And quantifiers are required often as a result of this. And so those words that I just used, drop, ray, blade, those are the equivalents to Chinese quantifiers, and there are a lot of them, and I'll give some as examples in the next slides. So when are quantifiers used in Chinese? Well, here are some basic examples. The first one is 这, which you likely know means this. If you want to say this and then something, you need to say 这, quantifier something. Similarly, 那 means that. So 那, quantifier something. And also, as mentioned before, if you want to say 3 people, for example, it would be 3, quantifier people. Even though in English people is quantifiable, in Chinese it's not. I want to point out here that this is often but not always. So for majority of Chinese speaking, quantifiers are used, but at the end of the video I will also show sometimes when they're not used. Boy, that was a lot of mumbo jumbo. Now let's get to some serious examples. The first one is 这个人. 这 or 这, both are the same, means this. 个 is the most generic quantifier mentioned just a few slides ago. 人 means person. So when you want to say this person, you have to say 这个人. Here are some others. 那只狗. 狗 means dog. 只 is the quantifier most often used for animals. And 那 again means that. So here are some more examples. 三只猫 means 3 cats. 只 is the quantifier often used for animals. 三 3, 猫 cats. 五个人 五 5, 个 the quantifier for people, the most generic quantifier. 人 person or people. 这条街 街 means road. 条 is a quantifier often used for stripy shaped objects, like stripe or long, narrow. 这 this. 这种语言 语言 means language. 种 means kind of. It's a quantifier that means kind or sort. So 这种语言 technically means this kind of language. But the best translation is this language. 这种语言. 文章 means article. 篇 is a quantifier that often refers to objects that are shaped like a piece of paper. 那篇文章 means that article. And finally, 手机 is phone. 这 obviously this. 部 is a quantifier that often is used referring to electronic devices. So 这部手机 means this phone. Now in Chinese, quantifiers perform another very interesting function in that they can disambiguate certain nouns that are naturally ambiguous. So let's take a step back and talk about English first and what ambiguity means in terms of English nouns. So in English we have the word light. Now if you think about light as a noun, you can go down two pathways. The first one is light, the thing that goes into a socket that sits in the roof. And the second one is light, the substance or the thing, the energy that comes out of that object. So light, light. And fascinatingly, the way we distinguish between these in English is also through the one being quantifiable in English. I have 5 lights, and the other being non-quantifiable. There's a lot of light. You understand that the one is referring to the thing that goes in the roof, and the other is referring to the substance that is non-quantifiable. Now similarly, in English we are using the quantifiable nature of those two words to disambiguate them, and in Chinese you can use quantifiers to disambiguate words as well. So here's an example. In Chinese there is the word 课, which means class, and in English we have the word class and it's also ambiguous. Now in Chinese you could say 这门课, 这门课, and that would mean this class technically, but what it actually means is this course. So let's say I'm taking history this semester. I could say 这门课, this class, but I'm referring to history, the history that I'm taking over the entire semester, this course. However, if I said 这节课, if I used a different quantifier, not 门, but 节, then I'd be referring to this class, but literally the one we are in right now. So 这门课很无聊 means this course is very boring. And 这节课很无聊 means this class, as in the one we're in right now, is very boring. And so the quantifier in this case disambiguates which 课 we are referring to. Is it the course or the lesson that we're in? Alright, you've made it this far. Let's finally talk about some exceptions. So in colloquial Chinese and sometimes formal Chinese, quantifiers can be omitted. But when you're learning Chinese, don't get your hopes up too much because this is very occasional. So colloquial means casual, right? So this is an example. 这人有问题. 这人有问题 means this person has issues. And the fact that the quantifier was omitted from this sentence indicates annoyance, perhaps, or just it shortens that sentence. 这人有问题. And finally, this is a quote by Confucius, hence it is very formal. And he once said, 三人行，必有我师. You'll notice that there is 三 and 人 right next to each other without a 个. This is 三人行, meaning 3 people walking. What he meant by this sentence is, with 3 people walking, there must be a teacher. In other words, he was very humble. If you can find any 3 people in the world, at least one of them could teach him something. 三人行. So again, occasionally there are exceptions. And if you don't know the quantifier for a word, sometimes you can just omit it completely safely without using the wrong one, rather just don't use one at all. Thank you so much for watching this video. I know it's long. I hope the explanation has been very clear and very helpful for everyone. And have a lot of fun learning all of those quantifiers. See you next time.